you're sitting at your group.
I would joke that.
Be here.
Just before we begin into the actual session, there was a group that met together to plan this conference, and it, in a sense, was the forerunner of our Staff Training and Development Committee, which will get underway in January. What the group felt was that we would like to know from out on the field what your training needs are, and we'd like to know from not only from you but from your staff where they feel they would like to have some training. And so Arthur and Brian together have developed a training needs survey. We'll be giving one of these to each center or residential center or office. And we're asking if you would take these home and consult with your staff via staff meeting or whatever, and return them to us by December the 1st. What we would like is that everybody has input into this survey. So try to reach as many of your staff as you can, and then return it to the regional office. We're going to give these out now then to the directors of the centers and the executive directors wide for the office. Okay? Good, thank you.
She wants to get things done.
Now, you got my, how did you get my seat? That's what I'd like to know. I know.
We have a guest with us this morning who will be with us today. His name is Eric Bacon. He is the administrator of the Timothy Memorial United Church in Toronto, a large congregation. Would you welcome Eric? Enormous background in personnel administration. And I wouldn't blame you at all if you sidled up to him during the day, asking you that question in the area of personnel administration. At the tables this morning are people who have not had any of the pleasures of NDR and supervisory training. There are people who have had 3 or 4 times. They have become experts. So that will be a happy combination, because it's my plan to move through this material quite rapidly as a review. There are 2 exercises planned for today. One in the morning, which will be an individual exercise on individual goal planning. And then in the afternoon, we're going to go back to the issues that are on the wall, which we have not yet entirely tied down. And by groups, in the afternoon, by groups, we are going to select a couple of those for each table and work away on MBR plans for those issues, and then present those to the assembled group. So that's our menu for today. I'm sure with diligence we will get through and out in great time. The next thing I want to say is that we've had already a pretty filled workshop. We've talked about individual style, we've talked about computerization, we've talked about human rights and labor legislation and the personnel matters being documented by the Army. And it doesn't take long in a meeting like this before things begin to get indigestible. And now we're going to do more. It's my understanding that the task of management is to be able to manage what one individual could never manage. So within the skills of management, the ability to take on massive amounts of work and get it done in an orderly fashion. There are two principal approaches that organizations take to tackle massive amount of work. One is delegation, and the second is planning. And in our little review this morning, we're going to be talking about both of those. Delegation, where if there's this much work and this much capability of an individual, then most of this work has to go to some other folks. And delegation is not a simple process and not always clearly understood, but it's an essential process if all the things that need to be done are going to get done. Second is the issue of planning, which at times seems more productive of work than the other way. And we'll talk about the planning, and we'll have practice sessions in the planning area, and we'll talk a little bit about why planning can make our life easier and work of the organization more effective. I want to start by putting a little statement on the board, which I don't know how I would describe it. Without earth-shattering, that isn't quite it. Something a little bit with a little bit more oomph to it. Earth-moving, maybe. Earth-moving. Earth-moving. Quality of service. That is how well we help our clients, which is the bottom line of what we are all about, is dependent upon quality of the organization. Like it or not, them's the facts. If you bemoan some of the deficiencies in the Army, I am saying if those are real deficiencies in the Army, then they will have their way of affecting the quality of service to clients. And I believe that the quality of the organization is dependent upon the quality of leadership, and this is where it really hurts. So that's us. So what we do as humans and managers and supervisors will have significant impact on the organization, which in turn will have significant impact on the quality of service. We affect service for ill or good by this step. And most of us have long since left the time when we would work directly with the clients. And it's not true of some people in the room. As people are in organizations longer and take on supervisory responsibility, they gradually move farther and further away from frontline work. And that's a painful thing to do when you're a conscientious practitioner. It's an essential thing to do if you have managerial and organizational skills, and the organization is depending on those skills, make sure that the quality of service is high. I use this to focus on how important it is that we do those organizational things so that clients get maximum benefit. Okay, I'm going to go with the color machine now, and we're going to talk about that first of the two items, which I said were the main instruments of organization to get everything done when there's an enormous cloud of things that must be done. And I'm talking about delegation. Now, what is delegation? What transpires when delegation occurs?
Transfer of responsibility.
Transfer of responsibility. So if we have a group of responsibilities represented on a chart or an organizational chart, and if we're to delegate a section of those, it'll look something like this, where this has been transferred to another job and hence another person. And in the process, responsibility has been transferred.
With a follow-up to hold them accountable.
So merely transferring responsibility doesn't do it fully if there isn't accountability back. Can't tell when I'm moving around off the page here. So in delegation, all this confusing stuff about the labor law. Do I have to remember all that stuff forever and ever and keep close to the red book and make sure I don't make any mistakes? I don't have the kind of a mind that can do that, frankly. I just can't do that. So I immediately have to say to myself, well, who's going to do it because I can't? Is it going to be another professional? Is it going to be a volunteer? Is it going to be a board member? But somebody has to be on top of the red book and make sure that this operation doesn't do any dumb things and get ourselves into trouble with the red book and the people that run the red book. When delegation occurs, when that piece of responsibility is transferred to that person, what happens to the responsibility at this level? I have transferred the red book and all its pleasures.
It's still your responsibility.
It's still my
I mean,
responsibility.
that's loan.
Okay, so I have, when I transfer, I'm not giving away, I'm loaning.
That's the way I
Okay. Tremendously important. In delegation, responsibility is shared, it cannot be given away. And the reason for that is that this person is accountable to somebody else for that responsibility.
So, could it be looked at in a simplified way? That delegation is the transfer of responsibility for a task.
Yes. It's the transfer of responsibility for a task. And the task is usually defined in the job description and usually illustrated by a square on an organization chart. So we have responsibility transferred, shared, loaned, not given away. What else must be transferred with responsibility for that job to be done?
They have the designated power or
Power, authority. So it is responsibility plus authority that occurs in the delegation. That's better. In the delegation process. And Arthur used the word power. What does power mean in an organization? If you have power, what have you got?
Control?
You have control of the area that is described here. It's yours. And what does that enable you to do with that job? What freedom do you have?
Make decisions.
Yeah, it's a decision-making thing. So power is the ability to make decisions, the freedom to make decisions within the prescribed job. You're not down the hall with somebody else's job, but the power to make decisions within that job. So being transferred from one person to another is authority plus responsibility plus authority. Those are loaned. This person up here does not give away the authority any more than he or she gave away the responsibility. Now, when this person takes this chunk and transfers it, however, this person is no longer active on those sets of responsibilities. Somebody else has it. No sense two people trying to do the same job. So then how does this person continue to be able to exercise responsibility and authority when essentially he doesn't know what's happening? He's no longer doing it. Sort of, but I can't control myself.
Ongoing supervision? Is that what you're thinking of there?
That's one thing. That's one thing. Ongoing supervision. In the supervisory process, what does that person have to depend on in order for he or she to feel on top of that responsibility and authority? I don't do it any longer, somebody else does it, and so what do I need in order to feel that it's being well taken care of?
We need to have some degree of trust in the person's ability.
Certainly got to have the trust to delegate. 'Cause if delegation that isn't done clearly is not delegation. If it's kind of sort of delegated, but still kind of fuzzy between two people. So it's gone. Let's say it's gone. It's loaned, but it's gone. And how does this person carry out his responsibility and in position to exert his or her authority on work that's gone someplace else? Pardon?
Feedback.
Feedback. So the accountability task must feed back. This stuff is going this way. Accountability is going this way. So you set up a cycle where I delegate to you, you have the job and the authority. The only way I know that that is being well done is if you tell me. Now in that process, if you are the supervisor and you have somebody to whom you have delegated, who should take responsibility to make sure that accountability occurs? Whose job is it to ensure that accountability happens?
Both parties.
Pardon?
Both parties.
Both parties?
The person who has been loaned the responsibility?
And why would you say that? I happen to agree. you know.
Because if you're the person with the responsibility to start with, and you've loaned it out, and then you start to ensure that there's accountability, you really haven't given away that responsibility to people.
Notice that. Everybody hear that? If you who delegated feel responsible to make sure you're in the picture of the feedback, you haven't delegated. You've still got a fingernail or two on that job. You really didn't let it go. So,
We could have a middleman, a senior supervisor, who would be responsible for the others. We would have his supervisor meetings and report back to you. Or you could build goodwill and support and once in a while step into how things going. So
sure,
you feel the pulse of the thing.
sure. Who knows best what's happening? The person doing it. So it kind of makes sense that the person who's doing it ought to be responsible for the accountability. When you do it that way, you do a good thing for a supervisory relationship. What is good about a relationship where the person to whom the work is delegated takes the initiative to keep you informed? Why is that a healthy thing?
Well, you nip problems before they become a major event.
Sure,
You have a pulse of the thing.
sure.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's problems with that,
A lot of times there's problems.
because some people have trouble assessing that, they sort of think, is this the time when I mention this to supervisor?
What?
Unless
What?
you set up some kind of a, where there's a regular sort of meeting.
We will get to the notion that there needs to be regular meetings. And I also believe that every job description should have an item that says to be accountable for the implementation of all these responsibilities to the supervisor. So I want it in the job description so it's very clear that regularly I'm going to feed that back. And my question is, why is that way of doing it more healthy than having the supervisor dig it out of the person to whom they have delegated?
Shows that you trust them to do the job.
It's a precondition for trust. Now, what happens in the case when there is terribly bad news that the one person has got the job and has blown it? Then what is the human transaction in that case? If you say the person, it's better for the person to keep the supervisor informed, what's so good about coming in with news that supervisor just does not want to hear?
You still lived up to your responsibility of accounting to it, regardless if it's good news or bad news. When I'm giving a responsibility, when I'm delegated responsibility from my boss, and he just says to me, keep me informed of all matters. Any new information that comes in, I just walk into his office, I sit down for 10 minutes, fill him in, he writes it all down, I leave, I continue the work. If there's bad news, I do the same thing. I got bad news for you.
And if there's never bad news, what starts to happen? It's all good news.
He thinks you're doing a swell job.
Doing a swell job.
Either that or you're not telling the truth.
Whether you're sleeping. The world ain't quite that way, we all know. So the relationship will actually strengthen if the person can buck up his or her courage and say, I've blown it. Now, it depends a lot, too, on how that supervisor handles that. If the supervisor jumps all over the person and says, no. What is a constructive way for a supervisor to handle very bad news coming from an employee?
Great, let's have some fun, straighten it all out.
Right, and who's going to straighten it out?
The two of you, you're going to work together.
We're going to work together.
Okay.
That's right. So the way to deal with bad news is to make sure that the person who has the responsibility is front and center in the solution. And if you're delivering bad news, the best way to deliver bad news is to have some ideas of what you're going to do next. So the shock isn't too great.
Don't get up and do that job.
I don't think you should allow the person who's doing the bad news to allow them to lose ownership of that. I
To
think-
lose ownership.
Yeah, I think when they bring you the bad news, they're not to just leave it with you, they're to say, what can we do about this?
Terrific point. Supervisors have notice, be on alert. Do not pick up other people's problems. If you have delegated responsibility and they come in and say, look, boss, what I've done, hoping you'll be able to back out and leave you with it, Never, never, never let that happen.
I think you have to, I think you have to say that, and they may be creative for that. Their bad management of decisions. But I think you have to say, well, what's the solution you propose?
Terrific. And what is the solution that you propose? And I will help you with that, but I will not let you leave with your problem on my back, because I have plenty of problems, and if that person's going to grow, that person has to find a way to solve that problem with my help. So the ownership of the responsibility and of the problem should not shift. And some employees are immensely skillful at dumping problems, and some supervisors are immensely capable of taking problems on out of kindness. She was so upset and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the big traps, and it ought to be guarded. Okay. This area of delegation in the Army and other organizations always needs better appreciation, more precise definition, and continuous review. The Army would be an even greater organization if more attention were paid to these rather fine distinctions of the nature of delegation. I want to go on now to the next topic, and that is the supervisory. What happens to these pens? Do they dry up in the air or something? Take the cap off? Keep the cap on. Okay. They evaporate. I'm open to volunteers who have a need to lick the end of it. And I don't know how to spell relationship, so I'll just call you. One of the big things that the process of delegation does is it creates a relationship in an organization. You can take when delegation occurs and there's two jobs, and delegation goes like this and accountability goes like that. We have in fact created a human relationship. A human relationship. I'm thinking lots these days about the mystery of human relationships, and I was thinking about this room. Last night I was thinking about this room. And within this room, there are a whole bunch of relationships. Some of them are intimately close. With some pairs, there's absolutely no relationship. And all the way in between. Now, the mysterious part about relationships is they're largely invisible. So within an organization which, as far as I can stand, runs more on relationships than it does on anything else, including good information. Good information is great. Good information without good relationships, I don't think we have a quality organization. So but behold, we have a mystery. And that is, when in organization work is delegated, it forms important relationships. And to the best of my knowledge, as those relationships go, so go the organization. If you want to have labor relations issues, then the number of labor relations issues would be in inverse proportion to the quality of the supervisory relationship. It's kind of the big thing that drives things. If the relationship is sweet and healthy, then these issues as they come along, the good folks, because of the good spirit between them, will find a way to muddle through it. But if those relationships are not good, then you have a mountain of organizational issues up on top of which you can never climb. The issues pile up faster than you can surmount them. So I make the claim that the relationship, although invisible and less apparent in the organization, is the primary item in good management and the provision of good service. And one of the problems with it is that it's invisible. Some of the people involved in the relationship can feel it and occasionally will acknowledge that relationship. We're going to talk about the fostering of that relationship, its importance. But I'm struck with the mystery that an organization is more built on invisible things, like called relationships, than on visible things like desks and folks. In order to describe that relationship, I am going to give you this little map. And my graduate learning is if I put the cover on that and go back to one with the cover is on, I should be up alive. And this is a familiar drawing now to most of you. The reason why little drawings are important to management is that pictures give us an opportunity to see how a whole bunch of things work together, where with Sir, how nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Welcome. The water's warm.
Merry Christmas, Doug. Nice to be here.
It started Sunday.
What do you say?
The problem in management, as I mentioned earlier, is the problem of complexity. There's just too many things to think about. So when we get to a really important area, if we're going to get a handle on it, since all the words get too voluminous, sometimes pictures help us appreciate a big area when words can hardly do it. So this is an attempt to get a picture of the supervisory relationship, and as most of you know, it is described this way. Can you wipe it up with your thumb? No. You have to lick your finger, not probably here. Will I keel over if I do that? Many days, but I could use it. Okay. That little chart is talking about the relationship between you and the people you supervise and you and your boss. And it is attempting to describe the qualities of that relationship that make it constructive, make it possible for work to get done, for decisions to get made, for accountability to occur. We're talking about the elements of the supervisory relationship. And that little chart says two big things. First thing it says is that the relationship has to represent a balance between good human relations on the one side and getting the job done on the other. The job needs to get done. No question about that. And there needs to be a focus on getting the job done. Second, this is a human process, and supervision needs to attend to the people. The relationship according to my plan, will make or break the performance of the organization, of the department. So that's the one big message. The other big message is that in every job, there are usually both service and organizational responsibilities. If you look down the left-hand side of the chart, you could put underneath those the items of job description. And so a job description should describe the direct service responsibilities that the person has in the job that has been delegated. And it should describe the organizational responsibilities. And why would we want to have a balance between the service responsibilities of the job and the organizational responsibilities? Why is that important?
So you don't lose sight of the overall picture. You're having service responsibility and light on the organizational responsibilities. You can lose sight of what the whole organizational mission statement and everything is. If you're top heavy on the other aspect of it, then you lose sight of the service delivery that potentially would be compliant with it.
Terrific. So that for there to be quality service, it's not merely a matter of having good counseling. You've got to have good counseling. But if you don't have good record keeping and good supervision and good teamwork on the organizational side, that good counseling will be impeded by an organization that's not functioning the way it should. So for there to be a constructive supervisor relationship, there needs to be a balance between the human relations task side, and there needs to be a balance in the job between a focus on service and a focus on organization. In the expansion of this, the elements of human relations were described in former sessions, and I'll just go over them again. Maybe some of you remember what those human relations elements are. I know you do, Major Guthrie. Of course. But so I won't ask you. What are some of the elements in the human relations side? One more. Anybody remember? Concreteness. Now, we don't have time today. Pardon?
The concreteness meeting.
We don't have time today to go over, as we have in the past, the meaning of those words and discuss the meaning of those words. Are all those words reasonably familiar? Do they represent to you something that you think is important in the supervisory process? Or is there any one of those words that you'd like to have a comment or two on?
I wasn't in the issue of that meeting,
Okay.
so I'm just wondering about that word concreteness.
Concreteness. In the interchange in a good relationship, people who have a good relationship do not beat around the bush with generalities and if maybes and buts. They get right to it. A good relationship is exemplified by very direct, specific language. We don't need to bother with a whole bunch of elaborate, polite introductions because we are close and we just get right to it. I went to a Markham Institute board meeting last night, and I walked in, and I know these men. And we said hi, but after hi, we were right into it. That's an example of a good relationship, and nobody would confuse the language. It was short words, not long words. So one example of a good relationship is that the language and the conversation is very specific, and as opposed to very general and kind of fuzzy and cloudy. Anybody else? Thank you for asking that question. Anybody else have a question about the meaning of those words? Okay, the other side of the transaction is MBR, Management by Results, which is a way to plan and evaluate. Now, what does it mean to plan and evaluate? What is planning anyways?
Fixed schedule, keep you on track.
You decide where you want to get to. And usually, if you're planning, you write it down. So you write down where you want to get to. Is there anything else that goes into planning and evaluation?
Needs?
Where do needs fit into that process?
I don't know what I want to plan, I don't know what I need.
Okay, so even before I decide where I want to get, I need to have a little picture of fundamentally why do I want to get there. So we want to know ultimately what's the purpose of this thing, what do we want to achieve, what else do we want to have in a purpose?
How we're going to.
How are we going to get there? How are we going to get there? So why, what, how, when,
And who?
who? Who's going to make sure this happens? Okay. Have we done it? We've got why, what, where, when, who. Have we done it?
What's the end result?
Yes. We need another W word. Did it happen? That's the evaluation question. Did it happen? So, why is planning so fuzzy, difficult, and confusing? Everybody talks about planning, and you listen to two people talk, and you're sure they're talking about different things. One's over here, one's over there. We know what we need around this place is more planning. Some of us aren't so sure about that. Why is planning confusing when it's obvious? We just define planning in about less than a minute. We're not confused about what planning is. So why is planning so confusing?
Your events you're planning haven't occurred yet.
Pardon?
What you're planning hasn't occurred yet. There's an unknown there.
The unknown between the plan and the result.
Yes.
There's also a difference between what people perceive as their needs. Sometimes they get hung up on.
Different needs. Right. Anybody else have any idea why planning is confusing?
You have to remember that when you're planning, if you don't plan so accurately that it's that you can't accomplish it.
That's the 20% rule about you plan 20% well, leave the rest alone. Be parsimonious. That's a good word. Parsimonious. If you make very elaborate plans that try to cover everything, you will plan and never get things done. So plans have to be very practical. They have to be selective. You can't plan everything. Don't try to plan it.
Sometimes I think achieving what we set out for eludes us because we haven't really honed in on what the real task is.
You got it. We haven't honed in. An MBR is a technique that forces you to hone in and be very specific about what result you expect to get. And then it'll tell you whether you got it or not. That's the beauty of MBR. The other thing that's confusing about planning is that organizations are complicated and have various levels. So you get planning occurring simultaneously at, in the Army, I'm sure, 6 or 7 different levels. At the case level, with the client, at the staff level and their performance, on the program level with this unit, now at the regional level, THQ level, in corrections, above THQ level, at the cabinet level. So there's 6 levels of planning which are occurring simultaneously. And you hear about a plan up here, and you wonder how it's relevant to a plan down here. So the massiveness of organization and the massiveness of planning tends to cloud the issue. And it's terribly important, therefore, to have a focus and be very clear where your planning responsibility begins and ends. And I'm going to suggest that in this relationship, and this little chart, in fact, suggests that planning for that relationship and that job begins and ends here. And that planning should not dribble into other areas of planning. Very important, because this is a pretty confidential transaction between 2 people. And the rules of confidentiality need to be very clearly understood for this relationship to work well. So the plan for that relationship and that job is not public knowledge in the Army. My view is it's private to the 2 people. Period. And unless the 2 of them agree that somebody else has a peek, that's it. I think that's the only way that you can get an honest, genuine commitment to supervision. Okay. Now we're going to go, and any questions about how far we've gone so far? We've said delegation is the principal way that an organization copes with the mass of work. It's impossible to manage any other way. The delegation creates a working relationship exemplified by transfer of responsibility and authority, and where accountability is the responsibility of the person who's received the job to keep the other person highly informed. That creates a unique relationship which, to my mind, is at the heart of the performance of the organization. We've said that it needs to be a relationship that deals in human terms, person to person, and now we're talking about it getting the job done through planning, a la MBR.
We have, what are your views on planning in this respect? Short range and as long range. And the reason I'm saying this is that sometimes with service-oriented organizations such as ours, where legislation is changing rapidly, you could plan for 5 years, but within that 5 years, the legislation would change 3 times, which would disrupt the plans.
Well, my view is that long-range strategic planning is essential to every operating unit, and that the target should be something like 3 to 5 years, but it should be done every year.
So it's a constant planning.
It's a constant process of looking ahead 3 to 5 years. And I don't see how any operating unit can function realistically without that capability. It's a very simple process, very low cost, and I don't know why more organizations don't do it. Because without it, you're being blown by other people's winds, and you're not steering with your own rudder. only way that I can foster strategic planning through all levels of the Army, which is put a glow in my heart. Another glow in my heart.
Bob, I heard this theory one time, have long-range goals will keep your aim short. It's like when you're not a good bowler, you can't hit that center pin, but I found that if I could aim at those 5 little dots in front, if the ball went over that center dot, I could pretty well hit one of those pins down there.
You got to have both. You got to have the short run targets, which is what we're all working at every day. But if those short run targets do not represent a very important longer-term direction, you can be winning at things that are not important. You can be fighting the wrong battle. So you have to, your short-range goals must be shaped by the values and judgments about where do we want to get this thing in 3 to 5 years. That's why you got to have both. The long-range planning thing is so simple. It's done on an annual, keep it simple style. Easy, organizationally easy to keep a picture ahead as to where we're taking this. And then that's the context within which you can shape your short-term goals. I don't think you can shape your short-term goals if you don't have a picture of the long-term. Take the long range. Yeah, every year you go back and say, how does it look now? What's the top priority and what do we have to do now? Okay, I keep losing track of time. You need some of this. 10, 15 minutes. Great time. I should look at my notes and see whether I'm on the right day here.
Yeah, I'm not the only one who gets confused.
We're doing this great. We're doing this great. You all have in your hands an MBR policy and procedure manual, which I would like you now to bring out. We don't give sandpaper to Quebec. Well, I'm sorry. We can't get it through customs. Would you do something about that? I mean, with a shirt like that, if you can't do something about it, who can? That's right. Is there at least one copy of this Deathless Prose at any table? It looks like this. You've got to bring your appendix.
There's a machine.
Pardon? Yeah. How are we doing? Great. The search is on. Page 58? Terrific.
I'll read over somebody's show.
So, all is well.
Run up and get it.
The first page says, "Hear ye. Management by results is the way by which planning and evaluation will occur of staff and programs in this department." I do not know where your regional coordinator is in implementing individual supervisory application of MBR. I don't know whether he's sent an edict out to the region that says from now on it must be done. But that recently occurred in the western region, and I know it's occurring at some time in the eastern region. And I can only promise you it will occur here sooner or later. This memo also says that management by results is now the method by which all programs are planned and evaluated. Is now. And if you've heard people talking about October deadlines and April or March deadlines, you have the first sniff of this new great movement. What we're going to do is talk about MBR and its application supervision. We are not today talking about the application of MBR programs. But this memo covers the introduction of management by results as the prime method of planning and evaluation in the department. Would you please turn to page 60? And without losing page 60, glance at page 61. I'm going to ask you to do an exercise using page 61. But we can't do that until we've first gone back and refreshed ourselves about what those steps mean. So going back to page 60, here are the steps which we cooked up very quickly just in dialogue, and which are the MBR main steps. Needs. And it is terribly important to read these words with great concentration because they can trip you up. A description of the clientele and their special needs that the service is designed to meet. So needs describes clientele. Tasks, the major services to be provided to meet the needs. So notice the subject has gone from clients to the organization. And when you are doing your individual exercises, you need to watch for that shift of subject. It starts with the clientele, and then it asks you to identify the major services. Goals are improvements to be made in carrying out the tasks. So goals are very specific. Major services are just broad general words. Improvements are specific things that you're going to do to make things better somewhere. The methods are how, at opposite tasks, you're going to carry out the general approaches, or with the goal, the details by which goals are achieved. Notice the methods are referring to both of those. One hand task and second hand goals. Now, this next item is the tough one. The indicator. These indicators are observable evidence of results. Observable evidence of results. So what would be an observable evidence of the result in working with a fellow staff person? Let's get an example of observable result. If you are supervising somebody and there's a goal for that person to improve his or her performance in some area, what would be an example of an observable result? Pardon? We're talking about staff now as opposed to clients. We're talking about supervising staff, and you have a goal for a staff person, and the question is, what would be an example of an observable result?
Task took an hour, and now it takes 15 minutes.
Yeah, there is a quick statistical answer to a goal having to do with time.
note entries are more concise.
Pardon?
Case note entries are more concise.
Case note entries are more concise. Okay, now watch what happens here, because this is what's going to happen when you start to do this. Wanda, thank you.
You're welcome.
What does more concise mean?
Can I change that again?
Be more concise.
There's detail in fewer words.
In fewer words? Fewer words.
Clarity.
Clarity.
No, you can tell me that.
Oh, that's all right. Just think of the thousands of people who are going to get help from this dialogue. Okay. She said greater clarity. Now guess what I'm going to say. Yeah. Oh, I didn't say that. I would never say that. In fact, I'm about to show how you can do it. One, how could things be identified as more or less clear?
Through the person's use of English language. If you have somebody who's making entries in a case file, and it's taking them 3.5 pages to come to a point, and all of a sudden now they're able to come to that point in one line. Yeah,
Well, I think you're doing it correctly, but you're not always.
thinking that.
This is tough. So you're out of the woods in terms of probably shorter is clearer, but if I came to see you, how would I decide that those 3 pages was less clear than the 1 line?
Content.
Content? What would I have to look at that would convince me?
Focal point.
And what is that?
It could be a family problem and pinpointing exactly what the family problem is, or a process in reintegration, looking at where the reintegration process is being done.
Does anybody want to help Wanda with any approach that would solve her problem? She wants case notes clearer, and I'm giving her a hard time on the question of observable evidence that case notes are clear. You got an idea to help her?
Well, I don't know if I'll help her. I'll probably jump in and sync with her.
Well, you're already in. Now we're going to see whether you sink or swim.
One way of indicating, from my perspective, that is, if the entries now reflect the original goal or plan that was implemented.
Aha. Aha.
Well, I think that.
Of course you do. But no, that's fairly neat, isn't it? That's fairly neat. I think you're swimming at a good rate. I think you are. So what he has said is, the case notes reflect progress on the goal statement. And you can look at it and say, there's the goal, there's the notes. The notes are talking exactly about the goal, or the notes are not. So that is a fairly concise way to do it. Anybody else have that's a really bright idea. Any others?
Becomes visible rather than invisible.
And how does that happen?
When it's visible that the change is taking place. You're not assuming, or it's not something that's invisible that you're assuming.
Okay, what is it that you're seeing that makes it visible?
The notes, the pattern, the condensing, the goal that you're achieving. Your goal to achieve it.
But I was making it hard on Wanda by saying shorter doesn't necessarily, shorter may be clear, but it isn't necessarily clear.
Highlight the main points.
But that was the goal.
Highlight the main points?
Three synopsis. Maybe three synopsis and a highlight.
Okay.
But her goal plan was to shorten it. It has to be shortened, whether
No, it was clear. The word was clear.
Oh, I thought it was to shorten.
No.
I have sort of broken down the main, say the main goal is to make a clearer, concise report, but broken that down to more specific problems that I see in the report writing. It might be spelling problems, might be a grammar problem, and have those as more specific, identifiable.
Okay. So, the suggestion here is that if you want the notes to be even clearer, the goal might be specified not only as a clear goal, but with subheadings, with categories that are very, very precise about being on time and meals or whatever it is. So that if the goal is set up very precisely, then the notes can be compared with the comparable words. Okay, that's a good example of the toughness of making judgments. And what's the difference between that one and the one that Steve gave? Like Steve gave a goal and an indicator, and Wanda has given a different kind of goal and indicator. Anybody have a feel for why those two are so different?
One would be more objective and one would be on the side of subjectivity.
It feels that way, but what we're trying to do, we're trying to make the subjective one more objective by boiling it down to almost a checklist so that we really have it tied down. There is another qualitative difference between the two goals and the two indicators that we've illustrated. Anybody have a notion of what that difference is?
Tied into efficiency and on a timeline to evaluate somebody's conciseness on reports over a period of time. You might set a date, January 1st, we're going to review all these case notes and look at these parameters or whatever, but the other has a very specific timeline for each task. If you're talking about something now being done in 15 minutes.
So essentially the difference is, one is talking about how fast the notes will be written in time. The other is talking about how well the notes will be written. So we're talking about the difference between quantitative stuff and qualitative. The other words that are often used are efficiency and effectiveness. Management by results can measure both. And when you write goals, you need to be alert to the kind of goal you are writing. You can write a goal that applies to how fast things get done, and you are writing an efficiency goal. You can write a goal that talks about how well things are done, and you are talking about an effectiveness goal. Two entirely different applications of the same technique.
I think you have to have in mind the person that you're setting goals for. For instance, a person might now write a report of 3 pages, and it may not take him, it takes him, of course, a number of minutes or hours to do this. You might say, well, your goal is to be more concise.
Yes.
It may take him longer to be more concise because he has to think of certain words to put in there. So you have to know the person who you're setting this goal for so that he can achieve that in the time that you set, the goal that you want to set. Most of us are more wordy anyway. We'll say too many words when we're talking or when we're describing. It's far easier to write a longer sermon than it is a shorter sermon.
There's a sterling point that's been made here about management by results. And that is that this is a form of planning and evaluation that is tied to the individual. It's not a standard measure of something. you can get lots of standard measures of how well people are doing. But goal setting tailor-makes the plan to the individual, to the program, or to the organization, as opposed to taking the standard set of measures and saying people in supervision should meet this goal, this desirable condition, this, and this. And for any of you that are officers, the officer evaluation system is the other kind. There are pre-stated characteristics against which evaluation is occurred. That's what's called a standardized form of measurement. And they have value because they can be applied across a broad band to make sure that a series of characteristics are being looked at. Goal setting is the reverse. Goal setting looks at the particular needs of a particular person and writes a planning and evaluation approach based on that. So this is a highly individualized approach to planning and evaluation as opposed to a standardized one. It's terribly important to be sensitive to that characteristic of management of results.
So you're saying basically it's flexible and adaptable?
To each person, each program. Each person in each program gets planned and evaluated according to that situation and those needs. That's its great strength.
What was their input? Like, if I'm a supervisor and I'm going to set up all these NPRs for my staff who do not perceive their needs to be within the line, my NPR doesn't go there.
Right. So what's the better way to do it?
In cooperation.
What's even better than that? No, yours are very good and helpful. I also admire this under this conversation.
I don't even think that that goes for it, because I think there's a certain element of, as a supervisor, that I'm looking for maybe the quickest route to achieve something, whereas the staff are looking for the most effective route to achieve it.
Often that's what
Just going to say, in a supervisory process, it's actually the staff person that should be developing the MBR with your input, but if it's their own plan, then they're committed to working through the plan. So the main responsibility is theirs.
There's no question that we do it together. The question is, who takes the prime responsibility to get the ball rolling? And what Gene is saying is, the person who has the job, let them write the goal plan. They will own it, and then let the supervisor give input so that it can come out as a mutually supported plan. Then you've got the best of both worlds. You've got the worker motivated, his or her idea, and you've got the worker with the support of the supervisor to get on with getting it done. When we come back after the break, I'm going to give you some sheets so that you can practice doing goal plans. Now, as long as in your office there is of effectiveness, which is quality of work done. And obviously, the indicators for quality are tougher to define. Quantitative indicators are easy to define, and our statistical system now is loaded with those kind of indicators. I don't know to what extent it has qualitative indicators in the system yet. Two things I want to stress before I turn you loose on the exercise. Under task, when you write the task in on the goal plan, you are writing the element of your job description to which this goal applies. So the job description sets out the tasks that you are responsible for. And in an individual supervisory goal plan, the tasks then are the items in the job description.
Question. The format that we had set up before, we're going horizontal instead of vertical. We had discussed how important it was to sort of list all
tasks.
Yeah, just so the entire job description would be on a two-page organizational and service.
Yeah.
We'll be deleting.
Well, that's what we lose by going to a more manageable shape of paper. They wanted a more manageable shape of paper, so you've got to have a page for every goal plan, which means then you've got to append the job descriptions. And I'm not happy with it, but in a big system, if you have long sheets, the system isn't happy with it. So we had to make that change. I reluctantly agreed.
Bob?
Yes.
I'd just like to ask a point-blank question. Really.
Point blank?
Yeah. Is this a... Have a seat for a minute. I want to talk to you. Is MBR the be-all and end-all?
Yes.
Of course. No, I'm going to give you an example why. Like, could it be carried beyond... could it be carried too far, really?
How?
Well, I'll give you an example. I went to my boss a couple of months ago and I said, sir, I've decided to go back to night school. I'm going to apply for a university course. It has nothing to do with my job. Completely different subject altogether. And he said, who's paying for it? I said, I am. Army's not paying for it, it's personal finances. Okay, let's sit down and do an MBR on it, he said to me. I said, why? You don't have to. It's my job, no, we're going to sit down, we're going to fill out a whole MBR, we're going to see what goals you're going to
I sure like your boss.
Well, if you want them, you can have them. Is this on tape? I didn't mean it. This will be edited, won't it? Don't worry about it.
He just lost his job.
Yeah, I mean...
So we don't need to discuss it any further since you've now lost your job.
Yeah.
Well, is your objection that this is something you're doing outside the job?
Yeah.
That seems like a reasonable objection. And if I didn't feel like doing the MBR, I wouldn't do it.
I must be a good soldier. I did it.
You did it? Is that what makes you a good soldier?
I guess so.
I needed to know that.
I think we're as well.
MBR is is like every other tool. If it's used selectively and it's done well, it can be very powerful and helpful. It's like everything else. If you try to do it all over the place, one approach to every issue, then you're overdoing a good thing. But it's a good thing if it's used parsimoniously. How does that translate en français?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well, you don't get out of this course until you do.
I'll try.
Because MBR should be used very sparingly. Very sparingly. To get the best results. 3 plans versus 1 do 1 1. We didn't talk about rating. This sheet says that once you have an indicator, you can then rate results on the indicator by either words or numbers. You can go poor, good, excellent, or any other set of words, or you can rate by numbers. When you rate by numbers, you are then creating statistics. And Steve, we were talking about the business of at what point do indicators become statistical? And they become statistical when scales are applied to well-designed indicators. Consistently on the particular plane. If you want across-the-board consistency, unit to unit, then you have to agree on standard indicators.
Will that happen?
Yes, that will happen. Gradually with time. It's not with the efficiency indicators. There are already probably too many efficiency indicators in the system. So it's a matter of boiling them down to the most important ones. The effectiveness indicator is a process of growing them from the grassroots and gradually selecting the ones that prove to be best and most useful. That's a 5-year process. But the efficiency indicator, that's a 1.5-year process of boiling them down. We got too many. It's the odd efficiency indicator we don't have yet. Like my favorite one is cost per case. I don't see that in statistics. I think it's one of the most powerful things we can see. The only other thing I want to emphasize is that this particular form of planning that we're doing today applies to individual jobs. So I want to emphasize the confidential nature of this and distinguish it from the October and April deadlines, which your program has, on MBR plans which are accountable to the regional coordinator. Those are not these. These are confidential individual plans. Those are plans set up by the unit to plan and evaluate the entire operation. It must be kept separate. If these ever get mixed with those, we're in great trouble with confidentiality. We don't want to be dealing with personalities when we evaluate programs. So I'm stressing how important it is. And what we're dealing with here is something that you take back and use with your supervisor or your supervisees. Because this does have no place in the program plan and evaluation exercise. It's October and April date deadlines. Are there any questions about the MBR technique before I ask you to go to work creating the tool? This is the assignment. Prepare 2 goal plans. I've got the formats here. One efficiency goal, which is a quantitative one. You're going to do something in such a time, or you're going to do so many things in such a period of time. And the other is the qualitative one, which has to do with the impact of your service on the person that you're serving. This is outcome, qualitative outcome. Okay, with that, I will pass around copies of the plan. If you have pencils, you might, yeah, would you mind, so that people can read. Performance evaluations. And 6 copies got mixed up. What I'm going to do now is take you quickly through some of the highlights of this piece of paper.
This is page 3.
On page 1, the second item, ensure agreement on listing of the job tasks. And the quickest way to do that is, if you don't have a job description that you think represents your job, the quickest way to do that is to write one that does represent your job, and on Wednesday, take it in to the supervisor and say, hey, this is what I think my job is, what do you think? The quickest way to get on with this thing is to do it. Take it upstairs. Make sure that the listing covers all the major tasks and responsibilities. And the next suggestion is, in addition to the job description, have a goal or two. Now you have a goal or two. And I would worry less about whether it's perfect, but I would say, what do you think? Am I in the right area? What do you think of this as a goal? And what you'll be doing is not only initiating this process in your job, but you'll be educating your supervisor, which is always desirable. Page 2 starts periodically. Periodically bring the piece of paper out when you are meeting with your supervisor to review how things are going. The second point says, while goal achievement is important, it must not be at the expense of letting performance on the ongoing tasks deteriorate. Goal achievement does not constitute satisfactory job performance. The fact that you have a couple of goals doesn't say that you're meeting the expectations of the job description. The goals are special areas of concentration and improvement where you have decided to apply some measurement. Goals should be reported by the supervisee as they come due. When the date becomes due, it's the person's responsibility to account. Remember, we talked about how important that was. When the deadline comes up, I am accountable for achieving that goal based on the indicators and the target date. It is the responsibility of the supervisor to clarify and convey organizational changes in their context. It is the responsibility of the supervisor to ensure clarification of roles and job performance expectations. The job changing, and it's up to the supervisor to initiate that. And the value of having a clear job description is that if you put something in and you have a full-time job, there ought to be a logical consequence from that, which is people in the Army don't know the answer to this question. If you have a full-time job and you were asked to do something else, what's the logical consequence of that transaction? Pardon? Something's got to go. And within the Salvation Army, that is a lesson which ought to be started to be learned as of this workshop. I like having job descriptions with decimal numbers against the major parts of the job, which as the proportion of time that each is estimated to take, and it should add up to less than 1.0. So that it's a time management priority setting business. If you are working 1.3, you're working 3/10 of a week longer than you should. You should get it back up, and then somebody has to do something else. And how much time is it going to take, and what's going to go in order to do this? That's the only way to manage time and manage work properly, and for people to grow. Otherwise, burnout and confusion and all the other personnel problems that are so easily generated. Performance evaluations. The evaluation comes at the end of the period and should adhere to the key principles and practices of the model. Both parties come prepared, The supervisee initiates the evaluation. The supervisee does her homework and brings into the evaluation session his assessment of how things went. The supervisor responds and gives his or her perspective. In evaluation, in the main, there should be no surprises. If there's been good supervision, week by week and month by month, an evaluation is a summary of supervision. There should be no bombshells. There are too many bombshells in evaluations. And I think partly it's because good people, what good people do is they're afraid to give people bad news, so they wait till the very last day, and the very last day is evaluation, then they tell them. That's not kind, and it's not good supervision. Notice the second paragraph on the last page. Agreement on the summary and rating of each job is desirable, and a clear indication, if there is disagreement, a clear indication of the nature of the disagreement. One of the great values of goal setting is, if you have a disagreement, rather than fight over it, agree to set a goal to do something about solving the problem. You turn a problem into a constructive next step. We don't agree on this. We'll give ourselves 2 months, and our goal will be to find a way to resolve this issue. I don't see it here, but it should be here. The evaluation should be based solely on the written job description and goal plan. No bringing in outside issues for evaluation. If we have an agreement on the job, then the evaluation is based on the agreement. And if it isn't in the agreement, no fair bringing it in and saying, this is all great, but. That's terrifically important, and you folks in your supervision can bring that about with people. And the final thing, which isn't in there, is, as far as I'm concerned, these are confidential documents. And I think in the other workshop, I recommended that they not be typed, that they be kept in handwritten form, photocopied, each person having a copy. Save the process of running them through the public typewriter. Any questions on the MBR plan and its application to supervision?
Confidential documents, I thought we would go on the choice personnel file of the evaluation.
And who sees that?
The immediate supervisor, perhaps the director, if there is.
The director?
If there's a higher up.
Do people understand that when they come in as employees?
What?
That more than my supervisor are going to see this document?
In most situations, the director would be the supervisor. Yeah, I would imagine so.
But it's okay if other people see it, as long as it's part of the understanding in the first place.
We would like to, doing our audit and review from THQ, they will read our personal file. I have reviewed MCS to read our personal file.
MCS is what?
Ministry of Sure. We didn't use that, but they allow the other people.
If the regional coordinator would have access to the personnel file.
Does the employee understand and accept that in the first instance?
Sure. Just because they're working for us. I can get it to it.
So I understand about the ministry. You won't divulge it to the ministry. That's good.
We're not employed by them.
But I'm a little worried about whether anybody from THQ can come in and read one of these records.
Maybe we're talking about one.
Pardon?
Not anybody.
Who can? Who are the approved people who can look at personnel records? The regional coordinator, the executive director, the regional coordinator, the secretary. Can the secretary read individual funds?
Major
Meekins, you're saying secretary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Major
And
West.
does everybody,
If he is the final person that they have, if they.
does everybody understand and accept that? All the employees. I think so.
It's not spelled out in the way. I think we'll clarify when we get a policy manual in place, because it tells them that in their grievance procedure, if they can't get satisfactory level of the director, they're bond.
That's a different business.
We don't read the
evaluation. Nathan Meekins, going to open the first
Just
one.
to see if the staff is trade.
We'll come back to that point after. Come on up.
Tell us what we think.
That side and this side and do the top.
Is everybody listening? With attention, Brian. Okay. You can't see over there. Well, they can't see over there, so.
Ladies and gentlemen, I must first preface this presentation with this announcement. The issues presented here might not necessarily agree with this station.
Here it is.
We looked at the issue of motivation in the workplace, and we decided that the area of need to address is the development of a creative working environment or atmosphere. The task at hand was to reduce apathy in the workplace. Am I? The goal, or in this case goal, was to assist the identification of growth needs, and that is within the staffing personnel. The method is to provide ongoing training update, to explore the possibility of staff exchange. The indicator, improve when productivity goes up and apathy goes down. And we would notice that through creative program development and or use. A time frame, 6 months. And the person to take ownership to see to it that this thing is implemented, the supervisors. The evaluating 2, 4, good, or excellent. Any questions? Ask my team.
What questions do you have? Did you follow it? Is it strong? Does it have any loopholes in it?
Under needs, I'm wondering what people are we talking about here? We're talking about the area of need, identified needs that certain people have. I'm wondering what people we're talking about.
Those who are being supervised.
Under needs. the definition is the need of the client.
His answer was those being supervised.
Oh, sorry.
So it's frontline staff. It should be in the plan, you're right. But
So frontline staff
Frontline
need
staff.
to develop.
frontline staff need a creative working atmosphere. It's hard to read from back there.
It's hard to read from up here.
It's hard.
It's in Arabic.
Okay. This is a plan where, before you move it, this is a plan where there's a concern about the atmosphere, and they have the very creative notion that if we build on skills in various ways, this will motivate staff to make better use of themselves and feel better about themselves and their colleagues. Great idea.
Amen.
And the measurement will be that productivity will increase. Any further comment? Okay, then I will ask.
We don't get off that easy.
By what indicator will you note the increase in productivity? Well, I mean, you don't feel that you have to answer that. You have a whole bunch of colleagues sitting down there. You may have the answer, but at this point, you do not have a sufficiently tight indicator to transfer to measurable scales. I'm not arguing that productivity may not be a good indicator of better working atmosphere. I'm not taking that. I'm saying, how will you know when you have greater productivity? Anybody from the table? What would be a measure of productivity that you would feel was solid?
John Stein can answer this.
Whatever you say, John.
What do you use in your
More
office
creative
to
programming.
measure productivity?
More creative programming.
John, do you have an answer to that? Brian, do you have an answer?
No.
Who has an answer? Anybody? Anybody? How would you measure productivity? What do these folks do anyways?
One way
We
be,
didn't choose what they were
The
doing.
frontline staff.
They're frontline staff, but we don't know what and what.
how many counseling sessions a month they're holding?
Okay, number of counseling sessions a month. So the number of clients seen per month would be a productivity figure. If the general atmosphere was improving, you could use that number, and it presumably would go up if you were doing these good things for them.
But isn't the goal just simply to gather a bunch of growth ideas? Identification of growth needs, isn't that the goal? And so the indicator would be that by such and such a date, we've accumulated so many different ways to make an office grow that we've researched and discovered.
I think that's a very keen, incisive comment.
Wow.
How about that?
Bet you can't say that again.
That is why he's sitting at a table by himself. You're right about that. It still doesn't take away from the fact that they have a pretty good goal plan. All they needed was a thing that Arthur did, some indicator of productivity. Number of clients seen, number of hours of interviews, doesn't really matter. So that, I think, is quite good.
So you're saying the indicator needs a figure?
The plans that we are developing need to have measurable indicators. Which means numbers applied to the indicator.
Suitable applicants, under indicator. How many applicants? Remember we said 20 applicants probably for one interview? As opposed to 2 for any other one.
We don't have to.
Okay, in this section, we were attempting to address how to recruit qualified staff.
I think there are 4 groups that tackle that one.
I hope the other 3 feel more confident We felt, when I say we, I mean who. We felt the establishing of an employment pool would help identify our needs. The task at hand is to recruit qualified staff.
Qualified staff available for the personnel.
To have qualified, available personnel when needed.
That's the goal.
Yes. The method is to use postings,
Effective establishment is ineffective.
we have developed an effective, specific job description for each task or each area to be filled.
Continuous.
And continuous staff training. You might be ahead of ourselves. How to know if we have satisfied our need is if we have at least 20 suitable applicants available when we need them.
Oh, no. Sure, for
Questions? Anything, comments from the group before we throw a wide open? No? What do you think? 4 out of 10. I beg your pardon? 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. Okay.
It's pretty lofty goal.
Lofty goals? To have qualified staff available as a personnel unit.
When needed.
That's a little lofty, a little too broad maybe. Yeah? Anybody else?
Well, I don't know if their indicator necessarily means that they have qualified staff available.
It says they have 20 suitable applicants, but the suitable mean qualified.
Yeah.
It ain't necessarily so.
They have 20 applicants, they can pick on at any time, assuming that these people aren't going to look for jobs and jobs.
Personally, I don't know if that's realistic to ask people to do.
Definition of qualified?
Definition of qualified.
Perhaps you could sharpen up on the indicator by saying that 75% of internal vacancies are filled internally by virtue of the members you use.
Okay.
Within the given period.
Filled internally. Okay. So the two comments are that the goal feels a little broad and the indicator may not be tight enough to satisfy a definition of what qualified means. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Who's next?
Okay, we dealt with,
Standard size, back to
who's your president? We dealt with staff training, and the need was to have staff available to deal with crisis situations. Okay, so our task was the training of that staff. Our goal was to have 75% of the staff trained in crisis situations. Okay, our methods were through videos, seminars, courses. Financial assistance is down there so that, of course, if you're going to send somebody somewhere, you're going to pay their way. And the indicators were that by April 1990, 75% of the staff would be certified in crisis intervention. One of the indicators would be that the center would no longer have to refer hard to manage clients out to another. We'd be able to deal with a better percentage of them within our own facility.
What comments do you have?
Who's the person who's going to do what? The training? We would get in trainers that are deal with crisis intervention.
Part of that question is who's responsible for seeing the oversight of this goal?
Okay.
In the main, the names are the persons responsible for ensuring goal achievement. They don't maybe do it, they see that it gets done.
So that would be
We just do like, we'd be the
director,
director, supervisor.
Any other comments?
Very good.
Why would the goal be to only have 75% of staff trained in crisis situations?
Better than nothing.
we just arbitrarily felt that, 3/4 of the staff, it was a realistic figure to get, 3/4 of the staff trained at least in
You're looking at probably one per shift.
yeah, one per shift.
Any other comments? I have a comment that's general. In this case, when you refer to percentage and indicators, you should specify the percentage. Percentage could be 0.5% and still meet this. I'm sorry, not percentage. Decrease in number of referrals to other agencies. If it's a decrease by 1, it's not significant. You need to have a numerical target on indicators. The words decrease and increase really don't tell you. So you need to specify what you think is a reasonable decrease or increase.
Okay, Jim. 20.
50%.
Good plan.
Where's their other one?
This group was very effective. They weren't quite so efficient. Is that right? Quality, quantity.
I know the reader and the writer of this plan.
You are which?
I'm the reader and the writer.
You're a reader and a writer.
We were a little confused because we had Brian Smith on our table. We weren't sure whether we wanted qualified staff, period, or we wanted a process of obtaining qualified staff. So, can you see one?
No, I can't.
I can see one.
Let's just So we decided, the majority decided that we would develop a process. So our need was to develop a process to assist in the recruitment of qualified staff. A task was to identify the method of recruitment. Our goal was to develop a manual outlining the process to assist in the recruitment of qualified staff and to include the qualifications which apply to the job. The method research all current manual and other material, prepare draft based on materials research, 6-month trial and revision, and final approved copy of their methods of doing it. Our indicators, I can't say this word. Compliance of relevant material, information, by May 31st, 1990. Computerized drive by June the 30th of 1990. Implement and revise by December 31st. Approved copy by 1991. We will have to have our manual then to recruit qualified staff. Your next appointment will be in the Yukon.
Any comments?
No questions? I know we did a beautiful job. I know that.
A powerful job.
I bet.
Would you go over that again?
Can I leave?
You may.
Thank you, sir.
Well, job well done.
Well, this is work hard.
I would be delighted.
That's okay, I can see over you.
No, that's quite an undertaking.
Are you ready? Now pay attention, because there's a lot of thought put in.
Nothing less revision.
The need is a quality service delivery to clients and employees of the agency. And the task is to be undertaken by personnel management, or else if a task is the personnel management's responsibility. The goal is to establish termination guidelines for agency components. The method of doing this is to research the laws and other resources, to evaluate previous current practices, and the above to be assigned by the manager, meaning that the method of doing this is to be assigned by the manager to the number of people which he deems necessary to carry out those kind of methods. That could be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and we mentioned that the best kind of consists of 3 people, 2 of which are absent. Now, the indicator and date and person, the guidelines to be established by the manager by June 23rd, 1990. Here in this lesson.
Precisely. Today.
I'm having trouble with your task.
What did you say? Pardon?
I'm having a little difficulty with your task.
So did we.
I'm sorry, I can't help you.
I'm not going to be giving the answer completely because all of these thoughts were compiled by the minds who comprise our committee, and those are the people over there. And would you probably answer?
Take responsibility for that. Because the task is supposed to be the part of your job description or the area of management which this goal deals with. So personnel, this is a personnel management goal.
so that's why, but that wouldn't be on a job description, personal management responsibility.
I thought that'd be at the
They
bottom.
could be more specific, like what is, you know what I mean, like I understand, what I read in that is that you're saying who has the responsibility.
No, as the director of a facility, Brent, I'm responsible for personnel.
Okay. Okay.
We're not talking about job descriptions.
We are.
We're talking about terminating. Components means any, it could be an ARC establishment, it could be a personal office. It means any part of the services.
I don't know, what's the termination guideline?
Termination guidelines would be guidelines on how to terminate an employee. But that, you may be sort of knowing.
How does that directly relate to the need?
I'm giving you notice now.
For providing low-quality service.
How does that directly relate to the need?
Pardon?
How does that
What do you mean by that?
termination? How does termination directly?
It relates to the need because if you have an employee who is not providing quality service.
Then you fire it.
Well, you're thinking about it at least. So you have to have the right guidelines if you're going to put it into practice.
So you're going to scare them into doing what they should be doing.
Well, you use your method. Surely you've seen enough of this, my answer.
Are there any comments over this subject? I'm struggling with something. Down on the indicator, how do we know that those are good guidelines? I know you'll have guidelines by June of 90, but how do we know that those are responsible guidelines for termination? Because the indicator just says guidelines.
We will know
Which
they're
would
good
mean
by...
any old guideline.
No, it will mean that after sorting this all out and after meeting and establishing the guidelines, the personnel manager and those who are helping him to establish the guidelines will be satisfied.
Okay, I think what the guidelines need is some authentication from some source, either inside the Army or outside the Army, so that the guidelines can be claimed to match some good standards.
Well, we get that from the laws, though.
From which?
In our methods, if we're researching the laws and previous and current practices, I mean, by the fact that you're utilizing the laws.
Then the indicator should read guidelines compatible with existing labor law, or whatever it is. Then you'll have an indicator that has got an established standard.
When we were talking about this, we were very conscious of what we heard yesterday.
That's part of the method, other resources. What would that be?
Labor relations, human rights commissions.
So I would be happy if guidelines consistent with established laws and public standards or something. As long as you have that, I think you're fine. I think it's a good plan.
Shouldn't the methods be the task?
Pardon?
Those things that you have listed as a method, aren't those the tasks that are supposed to be carried out? And out of those tasks that you carry out, then you discover what you should be doing, what methods you should be doing to accomplish your goal and get your need met? Everything you've got listed for methods there, I think, should be under tasks.
I think that those two are very close anyway. You know, but what we're thinking about is who's going to carry out the task.
Well, like you research the laws and other resources, and then from that research, you write down in the methods what you're going to do and how you can apply to get to your goals. So shouldn't the methods there be under the task?
I think not, Brian. I think that this, as I think Gene was saying, is a generic responsibility that probably is in somebody's job description. This would not be generic to a job description, a specific task to get something done. So I think not. I think this is more appropriate for a task definition. A task is just a general label for a bunch of big responsibilities. That's what a task
Yeah, but
is.
you're merely identifying there who the person is that's going to do it when you put that down, not the actual task.
Well, I think that what Gene said was that in a job description, you will see the phrase personnel management responsibility.
Yeah, but so you do all those methods. What are you going to do with them once you've done all that research? I mean, still have to come up with a plan after you've done all the research. Research is in the end, it's the means to the end.
They result in the guidelines, which is the guidelines for termination. This work goes into here, which creates the guidelines.
But what happens if in your research you find 50 different ways of terminating someone, and then you want to pick from there 10 to use as guidelines?
Then we'll do a new MBR.
That's why, yeah, then you do. That's why I think the methods should be in the task, and the task, and, use the methods for something else.
Gene?
I think it's helpful for us to remember that another way of saying task is the type of service that's being provided. So the task is something very general, like counseling, personnel management, property management, something very general.
General category of service, as opposed to steps to get something done.
Okay, it's just that when you do your methods, what I'm saying is, when you do your methods, you're not really getting anything done. You're just doing the research, and you still got to decide when you're doing the research. Like, so you do your research, you get a bunch of information, then you've got to pick what you're going to do to get established a guideline. There's a step you take. Or unless you're just automatically putting a step in the method.
Well, you may be right. There may be a step missing in this detail. I don't think that's an argument that this one should be up here.
There seems to be always somebody in the group that tries to disrupt me.
Who's over there?
If you thought that was good, this is better. Needs to ensure compliance to the mission statement and maintain quality of service delivery. Our task is again the responsibility of personnel management. The goals to help employees be aware of and execute their responsibilities according to their job descriptions and the mission statement. The method, management or manager establish and write the job description. Number 2, provide copy of mission statement. The indicator, all employees sign job description and mission statement by June 22nd, 1990 in acknowledgement of areas of responsibility. Thank you. No questions.
Don't run off now. What do you think? Terrible. Ron says it's terrible.
Who's Ron?
He's that little guy over there.
I'd just like to make an observation that in that 143 or it is positions that we've got, there's no personnel
But the director is personnel manager.
That's from the job description.
It says personnel management responsibility. Personnel management responsibility.
Okay, so you're talking about the director.
We're talking about the function, not the position.
We could add that position to those.
What do you think of the idea?
Just because somebody is aware of their responsibilities, does that mean that they're going to comply with the mission statement?
I think for employees that are already hired, we better show them a movie of the Army in action or something so they get the message from another.
Are correct.
At this point, I think it's,
Are correct.
what do you think of Arthur's question? The fact that there are pieces of paper signed, is that an indicator of compliance?
No.
It's not an indicator, but it is
An awareness?
Indication of willingness or...
Indicator of awareness?
it is a method of drawing to the attention of the employee that they did sign this, and they should be complying with whatever you're behind.
Maybe they need to be aware rather than complying.
Does anybody think this is not a good idea to tie in the mission statement with the job description and ask employees to acknowledge their awareness?
I'm wondering how realistic it is. Compliance to the mission statement, like, you know, they may give you verbal compliance, but doesn't mean, you know, because they want to keep their job.
I think you could probably find some indicator from the way they are doing their job, not by what they're saying.
Do you have any notion as to what that indicator could be? Anybody have a notion of an indicator that in fact would get to the heart and soul of compliance of the prime mission of the Army?
That is reflected in the case notes, counseling notes that they discuss certain areas with the clients in regards to...
Case note records could well reflect that this person is not merely doing the job, but is sensitive to the mission of the Army. I agree. I think that would be a source of indicator. And so if the goal is to make people aware, then I think you have a good goal plan. If the goal is to help them comply, I think you need an indicator of the type that Arthur suggests.
I think that they both go together. If
They
they're
go
aware of
together.
it, then they make compliance.
Yeah, they go together and you may need both. But in the technical task of MBR planning, I think it needs to be fine enough to distinguish between whether you are acquainting people with something or whether you're measuring compliance. And I think Arthur's illustration of an indicator of compliance would be a solid one. It's a good plan. Thank you.
Come on.
That's even suitable for a movie. Yep. We tackled how to recruit qualified staff, and the need was to improve the quality of the staff, and the task was to recruit qualified staff. The goal was all new candidates would be certified by a These are only little notes. They would be certified by a professional body or have equivalent hands-on experience. We would also train interviewers in interviewing skills. The method would be we would advertise the job in a professional way in professional rags. We would watch Mr. Meeking's film over and over and over and over again. We would offer a competitive salary. And the indicators would be a written report on the movie by all members of the selection board by November the 19th. By November the 19th, we'd spend $3,000 on glitzy slick ads in correctional rags, on government publications. We secure approval to offer enormous 20% salary increases from THQ by 3 p.m. today. And we would have a pool of 21 qualified staff from which to select.
Why 21?
Why 21? Because they had 20.
Okay, let's see what you think of this plan. The goal is there seems to be two goals here, is that right?
Right.
all new candidates will either have some professional certification or equivalent, and hands-on, or what is that?
Or equivalent, having hands-on experience, like or equivalent experience.
And the second goal is to train interviewers in interviewing skills. And the indicators of goal 1, you want all candidates better qualified. The indicator
We would have a pool of 21 qualified staff once we select.
What do you think?
Josh was one of those ideas came from the film last. Excellent.
So they all came from Ron Poole.
I agree with those 20% salary increases as of 3 o'clock.
What about the business of, do they have an indicator that the staff is not qualified? Eric, what do you think?
Seems to be that turnover would be a good indicator. If you're able to offer those things, you should have probably better turnover, like a reduction in turnover.
And
Rather than just have a pool of 25 qualified staff and more specific.
I didn't hear you.
I'm suggesting that turnover would be an appropriate indicator. Like if you had a certain level of turnover at this point, and you're able to introduce these better terms of reference, you will probably see a reduction in your turnover. Measurable.
Anybody else want to comment on whether the indicator defines qualification? This says there'll be a pool of 21 qualified staff. What's the definition of qualified?
We already know that.
Did we outline that?
Yeah,
You
we
said
certified.
certification
From a
or
professional
equivalent in
hands-on
a
experience.
hands-on experience.
Right.
Any
Question is, where are they getting this pool of 21 and where are they keeping them for the year?
We're getting them through these professional ads that we're advertising and by this enormous salaries we're offering.
So where are you going to keep them in the meantime? You don't need them.
I don't think we suggested that we're going to keep these people elbow high at the state. We just want to pick one from that pool and then throw the rest back.
You have to have a pool to begin with. Dry out.
You know,
So, because we're going to keep advertising, so the applications keep coming in.
Oh, you're going to have a pool on the outside.
Right.
The pool is on the outside, not on the inside.
Right, agreed.
There is a statement just made at this end. Because somebody is certified does not always guarantee quality.
Yeah, that's why we felt that the goal should be the two, like we would improve our interviewing skills, to hopefully sort that out at the beginning, so we weren't hiring people just on the basis of a piece of paper.
So they were wanting to use two different approaches to confirm whether they're qualified.
Is this a review of the film we saw last night?
Do you have another one you want to show us?
Yeah, Steve's going to do that.
This one may not be quite as good as Mike's. Improve relation between staff and officers. Our task is to foster communications, we think. The goals are to generate a team atmosphere and a consensus-building approach, to foster a consensus-building approach. The methods would be socialization and the dinner dance.
It's probably better than your first suggestion.
Staff retreat in a warm climate. And seriously, we felt that the MBR approach, and I know I'm probably going to get vegetables thrown at me, but from the idea of a consensus building approach, if plans are built from the bottom with the frontline people participating, and then those plans are used to make plans for the directors and the regional and the national office, we felt that that approach would probably help foster up and down the line communications and therefore help us reach our goal of improved relations between staff and officers. Our indicators would be more input from the bottom up, a complete MVR schedule, that is right from the frontline people all the way up to the top. We haven't got a date there, so I'll say Thursday. And we should be observing more communication, more input. Well, I guess really these two go together, more input from the bottom up. But we should be observing the communications both formally and informally. And we should all be in Bermuda by Christmas.
Questions?
I was just wondering.
Oh, thank you, Graham.
I was just wondering when you said improved relations between staff and officers, whether you're talking about in one locale or are you thinking of it, like with the regional coordinator with the, TH2, like it isn't clear, like I wasn't sure if you meant just to...
That's an excellent point. Well, guys, what do you think?
Pardon?
What are we talking about?
And then I'm wondering too, and also the relation, like I'm thinking, are you thinking of the executive director? Like, I'm just having a little trouble with generalizing with staff and officers.
Are you implying that no,
Like-
the relations are not now very good?
I'm just an innocent victim.
I was ready with everything.
What's the answer to the question? Are we talking about local situations? Are we talking between local and regional? What are we talking about here?
If I had been there, I would have been talking about both.
Local. So the staff within an operation, officers and staff.
But the same thing could apply between us and say David and the civil.
Does that satisfy?
I just have a lot of trouble with just generalizing staff officers. I'd feel better if it was more specific. Like, because sometimes an officer will be a colleague doing the same job as another staff person, but sometimes the officers are executive directors, so therefore I'm having trouble with...
So should it be this way or...
Well, whatever, because then the plan would be more like how you would address it.
It might be different. It'll be different depending on
Talking
the
about your
situation.
boss or you're talking about a fellow counselor.
Okay.
I wonder if...
Or if you're talking
both
about
wouldn't-
a departmental head.
I wonder if both wouldn't be... Really, we could replace staff and officers and use the words, person one and person two, I guess.
Although obviously the issue was something to do with staff officers.
Any other comments? Okay, this good piece of work.
Wow.
Got
Away
it.
with it. I'm out of here.
To close this event, we have an illustrious panel who are now going to come forward, and the panel members have a comment or two to make, and then they wish to give you the opportunity to deal with any issues that might not have been dealt with yet, bring any comments forward that would assist in the implementation of the range of inspirational messages that we've got in the last 2 days. So if I could ask the panel members to come forward here and bring a chair. Each of us has something to say about the workshop, and then we're going to be open to your comments.
Do you want to table up there, Bob, or no?
No, just chairs. No.
Don't scare me like that.
A rose between thorns.
Well, we each have some comments. Who would like to start? Go ahead.
I'm not sure I know why I'm here.
We'll find out by the time we've had a chat.
Well, I think what you asked me to do was, Bob said, things that just popped right in your mind about the whole workshop the last 3 days. I think you said 2 or 3 things. And quickly, I just thought of 3 things. And the first one was about human rights and how important it is for us to be aware of the rights of our employees. The other thing was when Ruth gave her presentation, how pleased I was to hear from someone at her level at THQ to emphasize the importance of our mission statement. I think sometimes we're apologetic about it, and I feel that too often we get the message that we need money, so at any cost, let's get the contract. And I think it was great to hear the message that even Ruth alluded to it, that perhaps if there's a conflict with our mission statement, if this becomes the issue, then maybe we have to ask ourselves, should we be doing what we're doing? So that was great to hear that. And then finally, and this has come through in many of Bob's MBR workshops, that the importance of, and this was just mentioned just a few minutes ago, about the staff, like movement up this way, and how the staff address, brings the issues to the employers rather than the employers always saying, well, these are the issues and this is what we're going to do, and having much more input from staff. And I think one of the things that came through to me is that when a staff person comes to us and says something we don't like to hear, instead of reacting defensively or closing the door by doing that, be open to, and this came through too, that let's not just want to hear good things. Let's listen to the things that aren't so good. I think that will really build a good team approach. So those are basically the 3 things that just were highlights for me that were really great through this experience.
Anybody want to say anything about those 3 items? Right on? Ron says right on. That means it's right on.
I do agree that the mission statement needs to be made more visible to the people who do work for the Army. There is a tendency, I know in my area, there's a great tendency for people to take the approach, I'm doing this for the ministry, meaning MCS. And yes, we are, but technically we have some responsibility to the mission of the Army. So, personally, I don't know what the answer is. I think in our situation, more visibility from the Army per se. And I might get killed for saying this, but
We'll all watch and see.
Just in regards to Patrick's comment, I think that's one of Major Meeking's thrusts in regards to chaplaincy in all Army correctional facilities. And we need to concentrate on having chaplaincy in our facilities before we go into the courts or before we go into the institution. And the real thrust now is getting chaplaincy involved more in the ARC and YRCs. And I think that would be more of a frontline observation of the Salvation Army.
you know, I look at this not only as an employee, but I am also a Christian.
Right.
And to me, it is extremely important that if what we're doing is motivated by Christian love, then we need to make that very upfront.
I think it's important that we maintain our historical mandate. And if we compromise on certain things,
And it has happened with other social type organizations such as the YMCA. The whole nature of the organization is completely changed from that from which it started out to be. And if it meant that we had to give up or just to be running a social situation without the message, we would indeed be a contradiction to what we started out to be. And I think it's extremely important that we always maintain that, even though it might be through a lifestyle type of evangelism and a caring approach, that we always have that message get through, otherwise our efforts are futile.
The issue of visibility of the Salvation Army training facility, I think, is important, not just on the chaplaincy part, but also as a staff person within the Salvation Army. I mean, we see ministry people all the time, or federal government people all the time within our facilities. I can't say that that's always true for the Salvation Army, who have ownership of our facilities. And I think on a staff perspective, it would be nice to start to see some representation from the agency itself, Salvation Army. Not just our chaplains, but also from those that we're working for.
I agree.
You're my hero there.
I'm just going to take a little bit of a different format than what I did. I guess I would just like to say a little bit in regards to why we even went for a personnel management conference. Is that okay? When we met in Roblin Lake back in, I guess it was late winter? March. Okay. That was when Jim Johnson had presented his guidelines. And I was a representative, not only of Button Lodge, but also a representative of the National Staff Training and Development Committee. And I was asked to sit down with Jim and look at the guidelines and find out what type of training was needed based upon the new guidelines. And there was quite a long list, but a number of them related to personnel management. And in our meetings in the Staff Training and Development Committee, it was felt that we would concentrate on personnel management at this conference. And the areas that came up were the employment standards and human rights, and try and relate those to our implementation of the MBR process. Also, personnel management issues in regards to the new personnel policy and procedure and the whole policy and procedure manual that Mrs. Meekins is putting together, and computerization of personnel aspects. So that is the real main thrust behind the conference. And I know that when I've sort of been on the other side of the fence and not involved in the planning of conferences, I've always wondered, why are we having this type of a theme? And you're always questioning the conference committee. And I guess I now feel, sitting on a conference committee, why we do move in certain directions. And we're always going to question conferences and certain workshops. But there is a main reasoning behind the whole thing. And I'm feeling comfortable in the way that we've, I guess, carried out our plans, especially the way we've been able to wrap up today and use our concerns that we came up with and put them into an MBR format. And I think that being able to take that back to our facilities and to our locations will really be effective. And I think the feedback from everybody involved in the conference is really going to be important for future conferences, because planning conferences twice a year will be, the input needs to come from everybody. As we know from the MBR format, it's got to be ownership, and the conferences have to be owned by everybody.
I have a couple of things to say. One is that I would like to note the comfort level of the group. This group arrived. Now, you know each other under other circumstances, I'm sure. But I've been attending workshops in this general area now for about 3 years, and this group came in with a comfort level established and ready to go to work. And I think that's tremendously significant. You can't make big big changes and make big strides towards improved quality of service and all those other good things, good working conditions, unless the team is growing in comfort with each other. And I note that, and I congratulate you for it. I think it's something that we all should be encouraged about. The second thing I want to say has to do with the word empowerment. The two big strategies that the department is undertaking under Major Region's leadership are regionalization and the commitment to planning. Both those strategies are empowerment strategies, moving power away from THQ and towards local and regional hands. Now, there's lots of pain connected with the shifts, the pain of learning what an indicator is and how a team gets to decide what is a real indicator and a valuable indicator. But as soon as a local group undertakes that planning initiative, they have axiomatically assumed power. And the Army, under Major Meekings, wants power for good client decision making in the hands of the people who know how to make the best decisions. That's the local folks. So the MBR effort and the regionalization effort are efforts to decentralize power, take decisions out of THQ, put them into region, take decisions out of region, put them gradually into local. Now I have one comment about practical implication as it affects you. I continue to be very concerned about Salvation Army people carrying impossible workloads. Just incredible workloads. 7 days a week. I see 7 days a week, 10 hours a day everywhere I turn. And aside from the labor law, the implications of that, I think the management of one's local job falls solely in the hands of the person with the job. And I think the only way out of that self-defeating bind is when the person who holds the job finds a new way to do the job so that it's not impossible from a time-bind point of view. There is no edict, there's no system, there's no policy from THQ that can save an individual from overload. Only the person can do that. And I think increasingly members of the Army are going to have to learn how to set priorities, how to say no, how to plan to do things later rather than now. But I think one of the great risks of Army personnel is that good people can get burned out. And that's a business of managing time. And as these big trends occur of MBR planning and regionalization, they just set up the opportunity for that to happen. But they can't legislate it. Only the person with the job can make the job manageable. Those are my comments. I think that the workshop has been very enjoyable, as they all have been. I'm delighted to have the privilege of being here. Are there any comments people have that they want to share before we do our evaluation and leave? David, do you have some things you want to say?
First, I'd like to say a word of thanks certainly to all that have taken part here for this regional conference. As I said at the beginning, I really do feel that they are important and significant events in the annual events that we have within the region. I think, as you've expressed in terms of the comfort level, I think each year as we've gone through this process and with an emphasis upon the training aspects, so I think people have felt that comfort. And certainly, I think it speaks to the leadership, Bob, that you've given, and we've appreciated that leadership in terms of these training sessions, and so we do thank you for that. And there's been other participants that have presented, Ruth, and one of the others who's still here that I have on the list, Steve. And we appreciate Steve's input both this year and back in the spring, and bringing the computer aspects and bringing us up into the 1980s and 90s in that regard. And also we appreciate having Eric Bacon come along with Bob Shaw today to participate and to observe during this process. But I'd also like to say a word of thanks to Jean and the organizing committee. A lot of work behind the scenes of putting this together. To Betty Nelson, being such a gracious hostess right from the first when we arrived, having little welcome cards and knickknacks that make you feel welcome, and we do appreciate that. As well as to Arthur for lining up the speakers that we had yesterday, and the quality of that was excellent. And we do thank you for that, getting all the material. And I think, as we had sensed a number of months ago, this whole issue of personnel management is a very crucial and real issue, and I think it's been shown through here in this conference, both in the information we've learned and then today as we try to apply some of that, as we got thinking about our own appointments and responsibilities and taking this information back with us. So I do appreciate that. I also appreciate the support of both Major and Mrs. Meekins as far as the national office, and having them here for a good part of the conference is really going to help to us, and to sense that support and that presence from them. There are just a couple of other business matters that I'd like to touch on just before we do the final evaluation of the conference. And one is to talk about these regional conferences. We've made the suggestion that we'll do them twice a year, the fall one being for the managers, as we've done this time, and the spring one for our more frontline direct service. You may want to note the dates that we're proposing for this upcoming year so that people can book those dates and secure them and pass them on to your staff, and also be sure that you're budgeting. We're hoping to keep these regional conferences at about $125 that we've had, so you know that we've got to put $250 a year away for this conference, and we'd like to make it a priority. I know there are a lot of other conferences that are there that are quality and so on, but I think it's important that we are able to meet on a regular basis as we've been doing. And we're proposing the next regional one for May the 27th to the 29th, and that'll be for frontline staff, more direct provision. There may be workshops, for example, on chaplaincy, or maybe assertiveness training. I've heard people say they would like to have. There's a number of issues that we'd like to take a look at. Christian counseling, that type of thing, that we would try to establish and make it more direct service related. The other dates for next year, a year from now, for a couple of proposals, and I guess I need a bit of feedback. Do you find the Sunday evening or afternoon till Tuesday afternoon is good, or would it be better to go from a Tuesday to a Thursday in the middle of the week? Any comments from anybody? How you find that? How many prefer the Sunday to Tuesday? How many prefer the middle of the week, Tuesday to Thursday? How many, it doesn't matter? Okay. Well, the dates we're proposing at the moment is November the 18th to the 20th, which is a Sunday to the Tuesday. So that'll put it a little later, but it won't then conflict with our correctional justice week and so on. The other I did want to mention was, again, in regard to the regional conferences, to really encourage, I really would like us to encourage the participation at these conferences, encourage opportunities for our staff to be able to come, and so if provisions can be made, I think we should try to encourage that as much as we can. The other is we're in the process of putting our regional management committee together, and that will give some oversight to the region. We look for your response and ideas. Please let us know. Don't hesitate to write. Send the positive things, but also if there are some issues, as we've talked about over the last couple of days, that we need to hear about, please let us know and we'll try to deal with it. But the present management committee is comprised of myself as regional coordinator and Joan as assistant, Jean as the coordinator for staff training development, Claudette for coordinator for volunteers in the region, and Gladys Peckford for the Women in Corrections Ministries programs. We're trying to get that right name there. And we're hoping to add one additional person to that committee, and that will be representing the residential programs. And we will be represented. We're in the process of trying to get that worked out. So that's basically our regional management team. And out of that, we're hoping to establish some committees that will look at various issues, and we may be calling on others to get involved. We want to get as much participation as we can in the region in terms of setting the goals, setting the plans, be involved in decisions so that we are all feeling that we're contributing part of this. And that really ties in with this whole MBR approach that we've been developing over the last couple of years. And I would encourage you to try, even though I know at times it may be difficult to grasp as to how we can really implement the MBR and so on, but to really support it, keep it rolling, because it really will allow us to have a real involvement, a real sense of ownership of what we're doing, right from the frontline people in our offices up through as managers and then right through the department. So I would certainly encourage that we would keep on developing this particular approach. One other thing is make sure you've taken all the material that's been given out back to your particular appointments, share it with the people back there, get it around, copy it, make sure. Oftentimes, I think sometimes we bring these things back from conferences and we sort of put them in a file and it doesn't get out. But make sure you share it around. Don't forget the cards for your calendars are there in the box, so if you want to pick those up, we'd appreciate you doing that. And I guess one final announcement, and I'll be writing out to confirm this a little more, but you recall we had just talked about the flow of information coming through from local offices through the region to headquarters, and we had said there would be just the 4 major areas. The directive that major meeting sent out were going to be budgets, contracts, program audits, and hiring, firing. We would like that to come through the regional office before going to headquarters, so that we can have some input, can give some support to those proposals. But another major area I feel we really need to be sure that we're aware of, and that is in the area of notifying us when you're going to be absent from your particular appointment. Whether you're away on a staff training for a couple of days, whether you're on furlough, whether you're going to a conference, whatever that might be, I think it's important that we're aware, myself for the eastern metro north part of the region and Joan for the western part of the region, so that we can be again supportive when people are away from their appointments, that we're aware if there are issues that come up. I think it's important. So when you're writing to headquarters about furloughs, about where you're going to be, make sure that we receive a copy of that. I would really appreciate that. And that's for the regional residential directors as well as our executive directors. So that will certainly help us in terms of trying to be supportive and trying to be aware of what's happening throughout the region. I think that's the list that I have at the moment. Any other matters that anyone that we've forgotten to say thank you to? We've covered, but I do appreciate your support and for the quality of this conference, and I'll pass it on back to Dean this time and do the evaluation.
We'll just ask you to fill out the evaluation form. Take a little bit of time and make your comment. And we'll ask you to pass it in as you go out the door.
When are you going to drive home?
Perhaps we might just pause for a word of prayer to close off the conference before we go about filling out the evaluation form. Our Heavenly Father, we would give you thanks for fellowship, for the opportunity to be together, to learn. We would give you thanks for the great responsibility of service that you've given to us. We just pray that as we now go back to our individual tasks, that we might know your presence with us. We pray that as we have responsibility for other staff members, that we might be given wisdom from you, and that constantly we might be working through and under the influence of your Holy Spirit. We would pray for all of our clients and those whom we serve, and just ask that, again, our service might reflect the love of Christ. For we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Gene?
Everybody go?